Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about the Pakistan-Afghanistan policy. Now, as we all know, that Pakistan has a very clear-cut stance regarding Afghanistan. We believe that we do not have any favorites. Whosoever legitimately claims the win over the elections is going to be the person or the group in charge. We don't want any sort of a trouble inside Afghanistan. No civil war-like situation is favorable for us. So we would prefer that the government should be stable. The ownership should be with the Afghan government. It should be Afghan-led and Afghan-owned, as we have always said. But unfortunately, the kind of response we are getting from them is not very satisfactory. Number one, yesterday, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Imran Khan, addressed the assembly. And he was very categorical, very straight. There was no gray area. And he went on to say that Pakistan would like to have peace in Afghanistan because peace in both these countries matter not only for each other but for the entire region. Secondly, as far as the bases are concerned, clear-cut, no. As far as support to bring in peace, yes, we will there. We will be a part of the peace process. We will never be a part of the war. A very clear-cut strategy. Now, a lot of people believe, a lot of analysts, a lot of critics, they believe that this stance is very, very stiff. Can Pakistan stick to it? And a lot of people, a lot of opposition leaders said there's going to be a U-turn because a lot of interest of Pakistan lies with the United States of America, and Pakistan will never, leave the Americans. Okay, we don't want them to go away. We just want to create an equilibrium. We want to live in peace and harmony with all the countries. And the most important thing, the Prime Minister said that let's not push these smaller countries to be a party to the, to the controlling nations, like America for that matter. So today we'll be talking about this. Before I introduce you to our panelists, our production team has prepared a report. Let's watch that.
Pakistan has always equated peaceful Afghanistan with a stable and secure Pakistan, as well as with regional peace. However, the growing activism of the Taliban since the announcement of the departure of US-led NATO forces in May 2021 is cementing the apprehension that another civil war in Afghanistan is raising its head. Pakistan has already paid a hefty price of having a 2,640-kilometer common border with an unstable and war-stricken Afghanistan in the form of terrorist infiltrations, cross-border terror attacks, and the huge burden of the refugee influx. If the US-led NATO forces really pull out from Afghanistan, there are inevitable chances of the flamed power struggle between the power contestants, including Afghan Taliban and the Kabul government, and these flames will not only engulf the innocent civilians of Afghanistan, but also will shake the stability and security of the whole region. According to ISPR, recently 2 soldiers of the Pakistan Army embraced martyrdom when terrorists from Afghanistan attacked the Pakistani military post in the Wadood, North Waziristan. However, earlier the Afghan Ministry of Foreign Affairs claimed that Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan was neither founded in Afghanistan nor did it operate on its soil. This statement was rejected by Pakistan, declaring the statement as contrary to facts given by various United Nations reports corroborating the presence and activities of over 5,000-strong TTP in Afghanistan. In order to assert Pakistan's wish for a secure and peaceful Afghanistan, Prime Minister Imran Khan in the National Assembly said that Pakistan has no favorites in neighboring Afghanistan and it would respect the Afghan-led, Afghan-owned peace process.
That was a report and very categorically exactly mentioned what the Prime Minister has his own mind about it. But anyway, let me quickly introduce you to our panelists. We have with us on my right is Brigadier retired Tipu Sultan Saab, Senior Analyst. Thank you so much, sir, for your time, Brigadier Saab.
Thank you.
And on Skype, we have with us Parvez Jamil Mir Saab, PJ Mir. Saab is a Senior Journalist, Analyst. Thank you so much, Mir Saab, for your time, sir. And we also have with us Asma Wadood. She's an expert on foreign affairs. Ms. Wadood, thank you so much for your time as well. Pleasure to have you both in our show. And now, Brigadier Saab, let me start off from you, sir. You heard what the Prime Minister has very categorically mentioned. Now, one important issue, sir. that is perhaps the very basics. I mean, are we shying away from the United States of America, and are we tilting a little more than required towards China?
No, I would not say that. I would say that I think after decades, Pakistan has found a strategic direction which is true to be followed for a solution in Afghanistan. And that for the first time that the Pakistani nation, the public, the government, the army, and the world indeed knows for a fact that what is the stance that Pakistanis have taken. Nothing is happening under the carpet anymore. We know for a fact that the superpowers that be would be utilizing the smaller nations to their advantage, as the Prime Minister has said, and their gunboat diplomacy and arm twisting and all that. For that has come to an abrupt end with absolutely not. And if I know Imran Khan, that is not going to change, and that is to the advantage of Pakistan. I think the Taliban understand the psychological and military moment of the occasion. Plus, we must also take into cognizance that Afghanistan, with any leader's speech, is not going to change. Afghanistan is what it has been under Brig Karmal or Sardar Dawood or Zahir Shah or Hafizullah Amin or Nur Muhammad Tarakai, all of whom were assassinated, and it's a power game that is going. The other thing that we must realize is that the division of Afghanistan across the Hindu Kush, across the Salang Pass, where the Tajiks and Uzbeks and the Hazaras concentrated over there, and Heratis have got their sympathies there. There's Panchred Valley and Ahmad Shah Massoud's son, Ahmad Massoud, and all, and those forces. Although the Afghan security forces have been melting, one thing is sure that the Afghan institutional approach to counter the Taliban is absent. If there would be any force to counter them, it is going to be that cult of warlords and those personalities like Dostum and like Ahmad Shah Massoud's legacy, or Hazaras or Heratis supported by the Iranians. But what one would notice that this time around, the Taliban offensive so far, if I may call it, in which they have captured various districts of Afghanistan, almost half a century of the districts fallen to the Taliban. They have started off from the borders with Central Asia.
Exactly, from the northern side.
From the northern side.
Kunduz all the way to the Tajik border, yeah?
This is a profound difference that one must realize, that they are telling those forces they bottled up in Mazar-e-Sharif and all those areas across Targundi border and Badakhshan and Panjshir and all that. They are telling them that if you mess with us, we are stronger. And the other very important thing that very few people realize, that the Afghan public has joined the Taliban in numbers.
That's very surprising. Is it the fear factor or is it the willingness?
No. I think it is the willingness, and it is the realization of a factor of truth also. That I mean, what sort of a choice does the public has when the Afghan military units are melting away and handing over their armor battalions and their weapons and locations and new equipment and all those cantonments to the Taliban. Although no major city has fallen as yet, and I don't foresee any city falling to Taliban electricity. They will have to fight for it. And the airplay and the Air Force factor is not yet been played again by the Americans.
But they have threatened the Taliban that if the current situation or the scenario continues, they will.
Well, the Americans also know, and the Taliban also know, that 2 decades of the US Air Force bombing and their onslaught on Taliban is not paid. And then the Americans have, when you look at 2 decades of war in Afghanistan, you realize that Pakistan has been telling them, the other forces have been telling them, the Chinese have been telling them that there is no way that you are going to succeed in Afghanistan. And they decided at the very fag end of what was the truth which dawned on them, and they abruptly decided to go away without any substantial infrastructure being raised, political or any viable other infrastructure raised for the safety of Afghanistan. They just want to go like they had left Saigon and all, and they yet want to control the things in Afghanistan which they could not control for 2 decades.
Correct.
And they are coursing Pakistan for bases which is not going to happen. And I think coming back to the thought of those people who would like to criticize the government of Pakistan for the decision for any U-turn, all is very naive. There is going to be no U-turn. There is going to be no bases, no nothing. Afghanistan policy Pakistan has adopted is going to be very firm. And Imran Khan has been absolutely very clear when he was not even in power. And he has maintained that policy and that stance for Afghanistan throughout his political career. He is not changed. He is not changed on that. He might have changed on few other things other than Afghanistan foreign policy, but over here he is going to stick to what he said, and that's a very self-respecting and that's a very strategically correct policy that he has adopted.
From our military point of view as well, sir?
From both both political and military point of view. After all, why does Pakistan want to be embroiled militarily across the Durrand line? Why would it be? Those forces, so-called spoilers, actually they are spoilers like India and the US and the RAW and the CIA, are not going to have their way. I think it is time for the Chinese and the Russians to come forth, with the Iranians and Pakistanis and other Muslim
Primarily, Brigadier Saab, they always talk about 4 countries: Iran, Pakistan, Russia and China, the regional players, to bring in their influence and make sure that things do not escalate further.
I just want to add one thing, that whatever thought process that you want to employ or you want to expect from Afghanistan, one must keep the psyche of Taliban and the thrust which they have been saying all along. They are saying that we were not involved in 9/11. You bombed us for nothing. You took our government which was in place in 1990s. Give that back to us. Then we will normalize the situation in Afghanistan and come back to you. Their political thrust is known. The Taliban are not going to adopt any democratic process so to say thrust by the West. They are not going to do that. So if that be so, then you have to negotiate with Taliban from a position of political position and military position that they are holding. The government in Kabul doesn't want to cede that, and very soon it is going to dawn on them that they have got very little leverage left with Taliban, and indeed no other player in the world will be able to impress. They will have their own way.
All right. Now coming to you, P. Jamil Saab, one important area. I mean, if I may ask you a very basic question, sir, because I read a report and I have always believed in it, that since the Taliban had nothing to do with the 9/11 attacks, whatever happened, I mean, that's a separate chapter, we can always talk about it. But the Americans really had this plan much prior to 9/11 to bomb Afghanistan. And there are so many interesting features. If you go through them, you'll understand exactly why they were there. To me, it was a plan because they really wanted to keep a check on the Chinese as well as the Chinese expansion plan towards the Central Asian states and towards the West. And secondly, obviously put a check on the Russians to come down and use our waters for that matter. They wanted it, we stopped them, now we want them, and the Americans are not letting them do that. Now, first of all, sir, was that a drama, that entire, because even if it wasn't planned, Mir Saab, the attack happened, I think it was 7th or 8th of October, and 9/11, you can well imagine within a matter of 3 weeks, they were all charged, and militaries don't do that at such a short notice. First of all, your take, sir, and the current situation. Was this the planning? Was this the end result the Americans were looking forward to, or perhaps things have changed over a period of time?
Well, there are plenty of books, which have been written on the 9/11 scene, but the Americans had already started their business in the Middle East, shouting weapons of mass destruction. Where are the weapons of mass destruction? They wanted to, just stir the hornet's nest. They dislodged Syria. They dislodged, all the Middle Eastern countries, Iraq, Iran, and they wanted to. I mean, they've given a straight message to the Saudis as well. So, and then of course, prior to that, 79, we see this war, which involved us. But at the end of the day, the Americans, look, they don't have any friends. Like we say friends, there are interests. whether it is China, whether it is Russia, whether it is any country. There is no such thing as friendship. Friendship are cordial relations, but there are interests. Why is China with us today? Because of the CPAC route, because of Gavada. I mean, they've come in firing not even a 9 mm bullet, whereas the Russians and the Soviets tried all their might and, involved us and, the NATO forces in an act of war. What for? Access to the warm waters, Lenin's dreams of 24. So all of this was a master plan, which, well, the Taliban war, the Afghan war, we say, it failed. Now, the problem in one of the words which Brigadier Saab used, the key word is power. That is the key word in Afghanistan. Starting from 1526 onwards, we see the same thing. I have mentioned it before in your program. I had a meeting along with General Musharraf with Sir David Richards, and they weren't interested in leaving Afghanistan. They said, if we leave Afghanistan today, what will happen is they'll regroup, the tribes will again fight amongst themselves, and then something will come up, an excuse will be taken, and they'll be bombed to death. Now, this is exactly what the picture is. So where do we add up in this? We add up because if they're in turmoil, we'll end up in turmoil. And then, of course, India doesn't have the scene. India plays the proxy part in stirring it up. Now, as the American forces, as I say, projected withdrawal is in July, well, what is happening is we've seen acts of terrorism or acts of insurgency, again coming up in Afghanistan. So who is funding it? Is it the counter-American intelligence agency who's doing it? Or is it the Indians who are stirring them up? After all, they need money. So where is the money coming from? That is what we need to see. And this is a very complex issue. Prime Minister has stated his stance. Very good. Okay. Now, he stated his stance. Then they put pressure on us on FATF. We complete 26 out of 27 of the points. And yet again, nothing happens. We still stay in the gray area. Why? Because we're not giving the bases. We're not giving them access.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
this is a multiple sort of a injury which they're trying to cause us. Now, what remains to be seen is we've got to get bigger players to be party to it. We've got to get China in it. And before I go into that, look, we say America. We had put all our baskets, in the American soil. Well, no more, because America has never ever come up. I mean, if we don't obey them, or if we don't do what they say, they put on sanctions, as they see, during the Kerry-Lugar area. Now, again, they're going to do the same on you. I tell you, they will do it. And they'll do it in a very hidden manner. They will not just come up and say, oh, we'll do this. They will, give us all sorts of problems. And we need to be ready for those problems. Now, as far as China is concerned, Soviets are concerned, or now they get converted into Russians. Russia is emerging. Now, see how they're squeezing their economy. Their banks are on watch. You can't do anything. We took our first Pakistani media delegation to Russia and Moscow and St. Petersburg. Believe me, everybody was crying that this is what the Americans are doing to us. The Russians. Now, this is the kind of ploy they play behind the scenes, and yet the man on the street doesn't know. Even some of the members of the parliaments in different countries, they're not aware of what is actually going on. This is a film. This is a secret agent's film, which is being, thrown onto us. And this is where we've got to be very careful. We've got to be one step ahead of us, ahead of the Americans, because their piece of pie, because China has indicated if the Americans, don't behave, well, the world currency could be yuan. And, all of these factors are going on. There's even talk of an Eastern G8. So all of this, America is worried. So why? One, the dollar is with the Chinese, but the Chinese have all the consumer goods. So what good is the dollar? So this is what I'm trying to tell you is that we have got to start our own and look at our own interests. Rather than putting our foot in different pans, we've got to see where do we consolidate our position economically, geographically, politically, and that is the way forward for us.
All right. Now, Asma, Wadood, one important area. Now, when we used to talk about issues in Afghanistan, one thing was very sure, that it is all about the interest. The Indians have a different design, the Americans have a different design, maybe, in certain areas, I mean, they think alike. when it comes to Pakistan, one thing for sure was there that we wanted Afghanistan, to have a proper, stable government. There should be no civil war-like situation. There should be proper economic growth, because if your neighbor, like Afghanistan for that matter, if they are doing well, it is going to, sort of support Pakistan also, trade-wise or otherwise. But since it seems that the way the Taliban are encircling the current government, I mean, starting from the north, you talk about Kunduz, they can do that any moment, but since it's a big city, if they'll do that, obviously they will face bombardment from the Americans and the allies. But having said that, they are practically controlling the border of Tajikistan, and so forth. I mean, it seems that they might not have a lot of resistance if they want to take over, slowly but surely. Now, what is that supposed to mean for Pakistan? Few people believe that yes, though we claim that we do not have any favorites, but Taliban, they suit us to be there. Okay, good enough. But ma'am, the Afghan government believes and claims that there is no TTP there. There is just Afghan Taliban. And if we have that kind of a better relationship with them, they listen to us. How come those Taliban are carrying out attacks on our soldiers, on the posts, on FC for that matter, carrying out bombings and all, and they've been claiming it as well. Your take, ma'am.
Actually, Taliban, the way they are coming in and the way they are maneuvering their whole strategy is just their power show, because they already know that they have an edge in this war in a broader perspective. They've already won. So that is their approach, just making themselves feel, making them like showcasing them there. Other thing that we are actually not focusing in our discussion, or we are only focusing on Taliban. Actually, if you look at the elections that have been done in Afghanistan in the recent past, the Pakhtun card played a very critical role in those elections, all of them. Even if they opt for democracy, Taliban will be a strong political force there. We cannot negate it. So having a favorite or not favorite, that is not a point. Taliban is a reality now. They are no more a roadside militia. They are a political entity, and most probably, if everything goes nice and hail, maybe they would be in the power. Of course, they have that edge of that Pakhtun card that have always been manipulated in Afghanistan politics. Another thing I want to mention here is that why we are not opting for a group or a section or a power section, global power section. We are opting for peace. In our region, peace is a hot commodity at the moment. Do you think China worries about who will be in power in Afghanistan? No, the basic focus is peace in the region. He is aiming for much more than that. That one, it's China's One Belt initiative and CPAC, and the other thing, he's integrating the whole world together for his economic boosting. Do you think he'll worry about who will be in power in Afghanistan? No. The only thing that China and the people who are integrated in this project, the countries who are integrated in this project, worry about peace in the region. Peace is the commodity at the moment that we see. And for that, it is a very right stance. Being in the right place in the right time is very rare for Pakistan. We have like hardly been there, but this time we are there. Peace is inevitable for Afghanistan. It will come very soon. That is what my assumption is, because the people who are asserting themselves, even if they opt for democracy, these people will have a fairly considerable, really good chance to be in the power. And like we have seen the thing evolving in the past 20 years, the way they have shifted themselves, Taliban shifted themselves from roadside militia to a political party, like in Russia, when they were asked to get some women participants on the negotiation table, and how the flexibility they have shown, it was like quite clear that they are also of the perception that they are not going to get their land into the same trouble that they have faced in the past. But because of certain hastiness and certain random decisions from the other party, now we find ourselves in a very tricky situation, which was not supposed to be there in the first place. So there are some
All right.
things that we are considerably ignoring at the moment, but they are very critical. They may seem insignificant now, but they will have an impact on an Afghan solution. And Afghanistan and peace is synonymous. The only thing that can create the civil war-like situation is in Afghanistan are the power lords, because they will be losing a lot. The Ghani government, because they are losing absolutely everything, and now they are seeking help from US and getting nationalities and moving and fleeing the country. So these are the things that are actually going to set the platform for a considerable, lasting, sustainable peace, because because the countries that are directly involved in the whole situation, their target is peace and peace only, because their interest is now associated with the peace in the region, and Afghanistan peace is integral for our region.
Peace is the key word, sir. But I think achieving peace is going to be the most difficult task for all the countries, sir. Generally, it is believed that the Afghan nation is at peace when they are at war, unfortunately. But Brigadier Saab, the situation seems to be very, very fragile, very fluid out there. I just want to put this question to you regarding the Taliban, sir. We always thought that they might have the street power, but when it comes to proper political election campaign, where free, fair and transparent elections are held, they might not win. Do you think, sir, it's just a myth and the reality is different?
Well, I think if we talk of democracy and then we talk of Taliban, they're two different things altogether. But the past about 4 weeks will tell you that the Taliban have got a gathering momentum and their support is snowballing. Maybe the Afghan, as I said earlier, the Afghan people realize the reality. There are certain factors that we must understand, and that is when we talk of the other nations, big nations like Russia and like China and the neighboring countries. The only leverage that the only input that they can have in Afghanistan is political and perhaps financial. Nothing more than that. Pakistan is one country which has a leverage on Afghan economy regarding food, medical help and all that. But we have realized that Pakistan has got leverage over Taliban when the Taliban are in trouble in Afghanistan. When they are at ease, the leverage reduces in its ladder. Right now, I think the Taliban would not be needing Pakistan as much as they needed earlier in the last 2 decades. The Taliban realized that. And the other thing that it is being said over here, the Taliban owned the attack across the Durrani. No, they might as well have owned it. It is a very sinister game going on through the ISIS fragmentation and the portions of Fazlullah group and Al-Qaeda, which has been recruited by the RAW and CIA to trouble Pakistan and to malign Taliban into that. I think unfortunately what is going to happen is that whatever thought that we may give to Afghanistan, right now the Taliban are going through a tactical move. They are not capturing, they are not going to have an onslaught on major cities before the US fully withdraws from Afghanistan. And that is why they have been so touchy and put forth a stern warning to Pakistan regarding the bases. Although Pakistan was not going to do that, but you've heard their stance. Once the foreign forces leave, then they're going to have a strategy to capture one of these cities, because right now they're going through the preliminary operations and their tactical moves of capturing certain districts and mustering the public support and all that. I think what needs to be pondered on is that if across this Halang Pass there are forces that are stronger, and the people who are there with Dostum, the people who are there in Badakhshan and Panjshir Valley with Ahmad Shah Massoud's son, Ahmad Massoud, and there are Hazaras there and the Harati support and the Iranian support. We can think of one solution, the Taliban can think of one solution, that over there in certain districts a different government can take place, and in Kandahar, Ghazni and other cities perhaps.
Is that a workable solution, sir?
I think that solution can be thought of. Otherwise, if you want to capture Kabul and have a civil war over there, that's a ready-made solution for Afghanistan, which unfortunately is going to happen. But if we want to have a leverage, a political leverage on Afghanistan, I think we need to sit down and ask Taliban what is their thought process politically. Are they going to cede any? No, the opposition like Ashraf Ghani.
Do you see a coalition government, or what do you see? I mean, in the future, because there has to be a proper setup, sir. You just can't go on like that, holding guns.
The government in Kabul has failed utterly and is out.
I'm not talking about the current one, sir. Not talking about it. Abdullah might have better influence as compared to Ashraf Ghani because of the Panjshir factor, because of the son and the brother of Ahmad Shah Massoud. They are also getting very involved.
That's exactly what I'm saying. When you talk of Abdullah, वो दो रगा आदमी है ना. From one side is a Pathan, the other side is a Farsi man.
He's a half Tajik, half.
But as far as Mohib is concerned, the National Security Advisor, Hamdullah Mohib, Amrullah Saleh, Ashraf Ghani, and all these people are out. Gulbuddin Hikmat Yad Hizb Islami is not seen. Burhanuddin Rabbani is finished.
Three names you took, sir, Amrullah Saleh and all. These characters have been,
their sworn enemies of
statements are
Pakistan.
so venomous, honestly speaking,
absolutely.
sir, that it's not even acceptable to any. But my quick point, sir, because this is something which is very important. You talked about the Herat Iranian influence. Then you talk about the areas close to Pakistan. Obviously, Pakistan might have some sort of an influence because of various factors. Then you're talking about North, where the Taliban had no control, but they have started invasion from that side.
From that side, yeah.
Now, that is pretty interesting, and maybe that's a message, or perhaps there is a lot of support from the Russian side also. So that is also believed that most of these Central Asian countries, since they are under a lot of influence of the Russians, so the support to the Taliban is obviously from them as well. Well, from the northern side.
I will tell you, knowing Afghanistan a little bit, that we should not be overawed by the Taliban gains in the districts. There is going to be a major fight for sure, for Mazar-e-Sharif, for Kabul, for Kandahar and all that. I can assure you that. And the Taliban also
most of the cities
and
are
the
right
Taliban
next to
also
Pakistani border.
I think although Afghanistan has not changed over centuries since the time of Zahir Shah and then the Communist Party over there and all those killings. But I tell you that Taliban have known to have said on various occasions they are not looking to rule Afghanistan all by themselves, and they might be accommodating some people there. I think Imran Khan's thrust has been very good. He has advised the Taliban that don't attack Kabul. Don't attack Kabul. We want to have peace. Because the impact of civil war on Pakistan. Whatever you may say, there are going to be influx of refugees.
And that is what exactly the Indians and the Americans would like to do.
There will be gun runners inside and all that. And it's going to be a catastrophic situation again for Pakistan. I think Pakistan holds the key. As far as the Western powers are concerned, they are done away with. I think the Turkish equation, nobody talks about that, the Turkish and the Hungarian, the NATO forces protecting Kabul and all that.
There was no reply from the government regarding that, sir. Pakistan really, appreciated that kind of a move.
Yeah, but one thing has not happened is that in the Islamic world, I mean, forget about the Western world and the Chinese influence for a moment and the Russian influence for a moment. I think if you want to get together and raise a certain prospect for Afghanistan, there has to be something coming solidly from the Islamic world. And the Taliban, who are known to be following the Sharia and all that, will be more akin to listen to that rather than to listen to the West. So I think whatever effort you may do, the outcome of the Taliban situation right now does not look very good at the moment.
Now, PJ Mir Sahab, one important area. Again, there was this story, and the Indian media was, just trying to sort of stretch it further, and that was about some sort of a, mini drone attack on one of the on one of the bases in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Now they started exaggerating that this is perhaps the job of the Chinese along with the Pakistanis and all. Now one thought, because I just talked about it because there was this could be the triggering factor. Do you believe that in the future the Americans, since they have been hearing this no from Imran Khan, might end up thinking about that particular base to have their center to keep an eye on the Chinese, on the Afghan issue, as well as Pakistan, by having some sort of a setup out there which they have been asking perhaps from Pakistan? And if in that case, how do you see the situation developing further, sir?
Well, you see, as far as China is concerned, Pakistan will make no such move ever. One. Two, you've already seen in the 50s when we gave the Butterbear Air Base to the Americans for surveillance on Russia, with the spy planes. Look at the relations we damaged between the Soviets and us, and we're not going to take that chance again by allowing these Americans to set up a base, a spying base, against the Chinese. So that's out of the question. It won't happen. Now, they want it for their own interests in Afghanistan, because they want to cut down their war, funds, because the Senate and the people there, they don't want it. But they don't realize that they have made a major blunder and a mistake in blaming the Taliban for the 9/11 attacks. Now, they made cartoons out of it, like they did with Popeye in the Second World War and spinach, how to eat it. They've done the same thing and created bin Laden as some sort of a monster. The atrocities and the damage which he's done, and the killings, everybody condemns it. But at the end of the day, the guy is no more there. What we need to do, like I continually say, is look at our own interest. What we are only speculating that they might do this and they might do that, India might do this, and what next? We need to be consolidating our position. The first thing, really, as far as solutions go, start making, these arrangements, ad hoc arrangements for the refugees to come into Pakistan, because they will come, and you will not be able to stop. You've seen what happened in Syria. So we've got to start looking at that angle on a much wider scale, not on a myopic thought. So start doing that. And if they don't come, that is even better, and we can give them out to the poor people in our own country. So start building that, because don't do things like what we do in Pakistan, lastminute.com. I think the time is over. We don't have the time to even think about it. We've got to start working on it. But at the same time, what sadly, disappoints me is that our main man, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, the foreign minister of Pakistan, who is out and about pleading Pakistan's case, is being badly humiliated in our own parliament. I mean, what kind of an activity are we doing politically? I mean, can't you just wait that the man who's representing you and going out and pleading, whatever Pakistan's case is, and there you are, you put him down, under the barrel. Well, we've got to stop these political activities as well. We've got to start thinking more seriously, more sanely, and of course, more logically. We don't. The problem with us is we are more emotional rather than practical. It is the practical approach which needs to be employed in Pakistan rather than the emotional approach. Something else happens anywhere in the world, we start, burning our own tires, burning our own shops, putting, our vehicles on fire. That is not the answer. The answer is to educate. If you remember the Prime Minister's speech in the General Assembly, how he clarified for the first time any Muslim leader about Islam, about its tenets and so on and forth. Well, we need to be doing it much more, I say, comprehensively. And these are the factors which we need to be looking at. We shouldn't be worried about the Taliban have set their course. They know what they want to do. We can't change them. You try, you can have parleys, you can have a bit of a ceasefire here, you can have, all sorts of remedies, but they're short-term remedies. We need a long-term remedy, as what Asma has said. We need peace in the area, and the only way for peace is for us to initiate that. We need to go forward. We need to go fast forward, not just forward, because we don't have the time. Because this is a developing story. July, August, believe me, they're not.
These are very important
time
months
for Pakistan.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, Asma Wadood, since we are running out of time, but I would like you to comment also on this most important and the key word, that's peace.
Actually, here what I would like to suggest is that we were successful in bringing all these parties to a negotiation table in the most crisis situation. That was the like climax crisis. We have done it already. So it is the as Sir said that it is a developing story. It will reach its climax soon in a month or so. So it is the right time to try and engage with all the parties, all the Taliban. Taliban is not like we are trying to treat them like the ancient conquerors who are savagely enjoying their one. It's not like that. If we engage with them, if we try to bring them on table, put a sustainable, peaceful solution in front of them that is acceptable to a majority. All cannot be attained. To a majority of people, we can take the steps ahead. It can be tippy toes, very small steps, but it will be a step ahead. It's not a time to lay back and see how the situation involves. It is a time to take initiative. If you want to have peace in the region, you have to take initiative now, trying to bringing them on the table. It may seem impossible. Afghanistan war, Taliban in their torn off shoes and clothes, fighting world's greatest economy was impossible as well. But it
All
happened.
right.
This can happen as well. All it needs is commitment and initiative from the Muslim world and the neighboring countries primarily.
All right. So, last
Well,
comment.
quickly I tell you,
Yeah.
few things are not going to happen. The Americans are not going to be able to stop the Chinese influence and march forward. The Indians are not going to be able to perform for the Americans. There will be no change on Afghanistan regarding what the Prime Minister has
Is this
said.
wishful thinking, British?
It's not wishful thinking. It is a fact. It is a fact that it's not going. These things are not going to happen, and unfortunately, you will not be able to avoid the fight in Afghanistan as of now. These
So,
things are not going to happen.
Next 2 months, as both
So
the
let
other
this
commentators
let
talked
the
about.
situation unfold, and let's see what happens, and let's wish and pray the best for Afghanistan. Whatever you may say, whatever the West may say, whatever the neighbors may say, but it is the Afghan people.
At the end of the day, exactly.
At the end
This
of
is
the
their
day, they're going to
decision.
decide what to do.
But I hope and pray things do settle down. But as the other guests also mentioned, that this month of July and August, that is going to be very crucial. But anyway, Brigade Saab, thank you so much for your presence in the show. And thank you so much, Mir Saab and Asma Wadood, for your presence as well. Thank you so much. So kind of you. And that's all we have for this hour. I'll see you again. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.